Hey guys, you know the drill of this kind of videos. After finishing the game, let's give it a review. Be sure to check timestamps in case there's something specific you wanna see. And for this, I'll be talking about the story, gameplay, graphics, and music. So let's begin. This is a game from Kemco Corporation, a company founded in 1984 that focuses in JRPGs. The webpage states that they specialize in mobile gaming, and as such this game was developed for iOS and Android in 2020. It was later ported to Xbox, PlayStation and Nintendo Switch. I will say this is important to remark as the game was mainly developed for mobile gaming with in-app purchases. For the story, it takes place in the Sand Kingdom, Muspelheim. The main characters are Ulrich, former court blacksmith who has passed away. He's the founder of the Ironbeard Blacksmith, which Volker, his son, inherits. Volker, Ulrich's son, who wants to become an adventurer, but along the way he's involved in becoming a court blacksmith after his father. Valeria, a friend of your childhood, whose dream was to have a candy shop, however she ends up taking care of the Ironbeard. And Pite, the fairy. He can only be seen by the owner of the Ironbeard, where he lives. As he has been overshadowing Ulrich, he has quite some knowledge. Beside them, we have other characters that will interact a lot in their own places, like the store, arena, or tavern. As you can see, there are not many characters. The story revolves around Volker and his quest to become an adventurer. Along the way, you will learn some small fragments about Ulrich, the kingdom's story, war, and even religious topics. However, the story presented focuses a lot in the lore. And don't get me wrong, this is good, but you can skip most of it, and the game is still playable. You don't get hints on how to defeat enemies, get important items, or anything. This is unlike traditional RPGs, where you need to interact with a lot of people who will help you on your journey. For me, the story is as it, as I ended up wanting to know more about the region, monsters, and some other things that are never mentioned. For the gameplay, I'll separate this in three parts: the fights, crafting menus, and the rest. For the fightings, we have the classic options. You have the option to attack, use skills, magic, items, defend, and retreat. From these, I think I never use defend. Call me ignorant if you want, but in general, I don't know why I have this option. This option is even more useless when they, after ending enemies, do tons of damage. I could say something similar of retreat too. There's even an achievement for retreating from battles that I haven't got. Now the crafting menus. This is where the stuff gets interesting. This is potentially the menu where you will spend most of the time, eventually getting even a little tedious. You have options for create reverse, blacksmith tree, modify, and display items. Create reverse is where you can recover materials from items already crafted, which I believe I didn't use even once. This might end being useful if you end crafting unwanted items, but more on that later. Display items is quite simple. Select what, how many, and how much for the stuff you want to sell. Open the shop and semi-randomly sell your garbage. Modify is one of the most useful options. Here you can add runes to your equipment and weapons, potentially giving them OP bonuses, or so they feel until the very end, where if you don't use them properly you are doomed. One cool thing is that you can destroy the weapon and recover your valuable runes, or transfer them from one item to another, equally destroying the original item that had the runes. I left at the end create and the blacksmith tree, because I found myself bouncing between these two menus a lot. To give an example, let's say I go to the blacksmith tree to check the Damascus knife to unlock the mithril dagger and finally the holy dagger. To craft the Damascus knife, I realize I don't have enough wood, steel and quality leather strips, so you have to go to the create menu. Once there, you will have to create some iron. Transform the iron into steel, but before transforming the steel, I will also need some flame stones to finally get wood steel. But that's half the way only. Now you need to create tanned leather, transform it into treated leather, transform that into quality leather. Oh no, wait a moment, I also need some wool before getting quality leather, to then finally transform it into quality leather strips. Just to end up noticing that you missed to create more to have the 100% proficiency with the Damascus knife, and start again for the remaining items. When you have knives, one-handed swords, two-handed swords, katanas, gauntlets, maces, staffs, spears, whips, bows, and a similar list for armor, you end up crafting tons of stuff, and this most likely will get tedious. This UI could have been refined more, so that in case I want to create a given amount of Damascus knife, it lists all the items, and they end up being auto-created, saving me plenty hours. I also found this game being so repetitive. Describing my regular days: go to the tavern and feed my party, recover at the infirmary, go to the Adventurers Guild and check it for the new quest, then go to the dungeon, finish it, go to the arenas you can only fight 5 times per day, and then finally go to the workshop and spend lots of time doing what I described before. Finally open the shop, get some money and finish the day. Rinse and repeat until you get the next shop rank to unlock a new dungeon, quest, items, among others. Where the game excels is in its customizability. You can modify your weapons and gear to get different attributes, change formation to modify them further, and also pick a class and a subclass for each character, ending with lots of possible combinations. I have mixed feelings about being able to outrun enemies. On one hand, I like that if I want to reach the boss fight, I don't have to fight every single enemy from the dungeon. But on the other hand, I wish there were some enemies that were harder to elude. Probably that they walk faster in horizontal, vertical or something. I am assuming this was created like this, so that you don't lose your mind with the inaccurate mobile controls. The game also includes mechanics for gathering all the items from the dungeon, without even entering. Run from enemies, auto-attack, etc. I am assuming this is where the in-game purchases come in handy, as there are some items that are not really obtainable through the normal game. I think this is another seeds. Probably people who like crafting games may find it more enjoyable, but for me this is the main dish and it becomes tedious. On a final note, there are some post-game enemies. Defeating those enemies was the best part of the game, as finally all the time invested in reaching max level, crafting the best weapons, getting the magic or skills really starts to matter. These were the most challenging fights and I had to retry them many times. Taking this into account, the gameplay can be a 7. For the graphics, in this part I usually check creativity, performance, aesthetics and some other things. For the technical part, what I can say is that the game has a little problem. The game freezes from time to time and you lose some frames while walking in the dungeons. This is not a deal breaker for me, especially since you can outrun the enemies, but it is important to mention anyway. I am assuming this was because the game got ported to multiple consoles, but as I haven't played the PS4, PS5 or Xbox version, I cannot tell for sure. At first it may seem like there are a lot of enemies, but once again we commit a classic sins in RPGs, recycling enemies to no end, and changing colors a bit, and every dungeon is going to follow a similar idea, where you will see known enemies for the first part, then newer enemies, and repeat this for every single dungeon. For the general idea of the game, some enemies have created designs, and some others that you may think are really important, they pull a generic design. At best, I can say it is a 6.5. And for the music, for some reason it reminds me a lot to Super Mario RPG. It has a quite similar composition with some wind instruments, but they also add different tracks with string instruments and percussion, making a good reminiscence for what is being used as desert themes and the like. Personally, I liked some tracks, and one of them was while fighting bosses. Fortunately or unfortunately, you will listen to it a lot in the post-content, as those battles last for a good amount of time, and some other tracks while having casual moments in the story were good, but this is not a soundtrack that I would listen on a regular basis. To me, it is a 7. For the most part, it is decent. Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom final score is a 6.6. It is not a bad game. I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it, but I couldn't recommend it for a lot of people, as crafting can be a bit tedious, and as I explained, that is a good chunk of its gameplay. But if that is something you like, then this game offers that a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.